When I covered Sunsoft's Batman back in episode 10, I spoke about how the game became a focal point for the growing backlash against Nintendo. The flagship example of how Nintendo's 2-year exclusivity clause in its third-party licensing agreement was harming the industry, not to mention fair competition. On October 22, 1990, things began to change. Actually, the story begins on December 7, 1989, when Democratic Representative Dennis Eckert held a press conference requesting that the Justice Department's Antitrust Division investigate Nintendo based on strong evidence of unfair business practices such as price fixing. According to the book Game Over by David Sheff, there was a strong anti-Japanese sentiment in the US business world at the time, and so Nintendo became a target. It was one of a handful of Japanese companies that had been charged with conspiring to fix prices around then, including Minolta, the Panasonic branch of Matsushita, and Mitsubishi. Although it's never been made official, Nintendo believed at the time that the investigation was due in part to noise that their old adversaries at Atari Corporation were making to the government. Retribution for previous legal battles over licensing requirements and the rights to Tetris. On October 22, 1990, an article in the Wall Street Journal written by Greg Zachary revealed that Nintendo had quietly circulated a memo to its third-party licensees earlier that month, announcing a loosening of some of their more restrictive policies. Certain third parties would now be allowed to manufacture their own cartridges, although they would still have to buy security chips directly from Nintendo and pay a royalty on every game sold. On the same page of his book, Sheff also speaks about Nintendo excising the 2-year exclusivity clause it had included in third-party contracts since the launch of the NES, which was the crux of another case then currently being fought between Atari and Nintendo. It's unclear as to whether this contract change was included in the same October 3rd memo, but an article also published by the Wall Street Journal in 1992 makes reference to this clause being lifted around December of 1990. This meant third-party publishers were free to release games across multiple platforms simultaneously if they liked, without reprisal from Nintendo. This is a key moment in the history of the 16-bit console battle in the United States, as it happened well ahead of the release of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in North America. This gave Sega a huge window in which to woo big publishers and convince them that the Genesis was worth supporting. It also had a positive effect on Genesis owners, as the news meant that Genesis games from names like Konami, Capcom, and maybe even Squaresoft were not outside the realm of possibility.